my favorite compliment is that when people write, they felt seen. Tony Hudson read a copy before it came out and told me that, he actually quoted, there's an episode of a friend of ours, Tony Hudson, on How to Tell Good Stories. Tony actually quoted that C.S. Lewis quote in a text to me about the book, saying that reading the poems made him go like, oh, you too.
Yeah.
Some people in our church who I trust and love dearly, who are friends, read pre-copies. And that was like the number one thing I felt seen.
Hey, welcome to the Ministry Mix podcast, where we're bringing you real conversations for the souls and strategies of ministry leaders. I'm Phil Gifford, and I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Pope.
Hey, hey, hey.
Whether you are a seasoned pastor or ministry leader, or just stepping into some sort of leadership for the first time, we're here to share stories, insights, and practical tips to help you lead strategically while also caring for your souls.
Yep.
Each episode, we'll dive into topics that matter for your mission, your calling, and your personal growth.
Yep.
And this episode is kind of a special episode because we're going to talk with an Amazon world-renowned, top-selling author of a book of poems. That person is our very own co-host, Richard Pope.
Hello, it's me. I wrote a book that was mediocre, but it sold a little bit of copies.
So,
was that good? Dude, I think I have a career in...
Yeah, just to take AI and let that turn into a whole song.
Suno?
Yeah, I love Suno.
Yes,
I'm having so much fun with that.
I make jingles for my staff.
So if you've been listening to this podcast here in season 2, you've noticed that one of the reasons why our absence at the end of season 1 into this beginning of season 2 was exaggerated was because we had a lot of personal and ministry things happening. Yeah. And one of those personal things for Richard was the production and release of this poetry book, which I joke around, it was the top seller in the subcategory of Christian poetry, wasn't it?
Religious poetry.
Religious poetry.
Which includes more than just Christian. Also, it was... it hit #1 new release in poems about death, grief, and loss, which sounds depressing, but that's actually a really big category of poetry.
Yeah. Bunch of dark stuff coming out, But no, I think it's great. So, like, I joke around.
Top new release in motivational poetry.
Okay.
I beat out Nicholas Sparks' books.
Let's go.
I don't know who that is, but apparently he's important.
Well, you did. So congratulations. And
I also beat out the Bible.
And you've had a chance to share this.
We beat out the Bible for like 10 minutes. It was above the KJV Bible. I just want to make that clear.
Not the Bible, the KJV Bible.
Yeah, the perfect...
7 times refined word of God.
The Bible that is like absolute, it corrected the Greek and Hebrew.
Exactly.
Listen, if you're a KJV onlyist... Welcome.
Listen, they're not listening to a podcast very long. They're KJV onlyist. And they also are not listening to a book on poetry. So
let's just call it.
So we want to talk a little bit today about poetry, but really, honestly, just how the soul and how we can use poetry and learn from poetry as we worship Jesus. So,
amen.
So let's talk a little about your poetry journey here, Richard. When did you first discover either a gift of poetry or your desire to do poetry?
Yeah, so most of our listeners, I think, are aware I had a really hard mental health struggle in my younger years. I spent, probably collectively about a year of my life in mental hospital. I'd get out, I'd be in for 3 weeks, come out for like 2 days, get back in for 4 weeks. Come out for like a week, and then I ended up being in one center consistently for 9 months and then another for 4 months. So maybe, 14, 15 months in like 16. So in that long-term like youth, young, like adolescent group home mental health like facility type setting, there was a guy who was a professor at a local college in English, but because he's an English professor, he's broke. So he also worked overnights as a tech at the facility, basically just, taking care of people, playing games with us, whatever. Basically a babysitter for people who had psychiatric issues to pay off his student loans, which is a really odd job combo, but it makes sense. English teacher, sad people.
Here we are.
And he loved old school hip hop. I loved old school hip hop. I couldn't rap to save my life. And he told me about spoken word, which is kind of the roots of rap. Rap's roots come from poetry and spoken word and like rhythmic storytelling. And I fell in love with it. He would play me videos of it, gave me books to read of poetry. I remember reading William Butler Yeats, which is a famous poet, when I was there, and Poe and Dickinson and people you've never heard of. Really loved like African poetry and Greek poetry. Like I really fell in love with poetry. And he suggested I start writing poetry. So first like experience, I wrote a really crappy Thanksgiving poem that I performed at our like family visit day for all the sad kids who couldn't go home and see their family. They let our family come and see us and eat, hospital food. But yeah, and it was bad and it wasn't great, but I mean, that for me was an entry point. And then coming out of the mental hospital, wasn't a follower of Jesus. I really wrote poetry pretty seriously, wrote a lot of poetry.
Yeah.
When I got saved, I started getting asked to perform Christian poetry. I don't remember how that really happened, but by the time I was 19, 20, I was traveling up and down the East Coast and around that DMV, Maryland, Delaware, Baltimore, DC, Virginia, Jersey, North Carolina. Farthest was probably like Ohio. Like I was traveling a good bit for that
regionally
age.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Even bi-regional.
I didn't even realize this was a thing, like that there was the Christian poetry like circuit.
Typically when people say that, I say, hey, have you heard of Jackie Hill Perry?
Right.
And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, before she was a Bible teacher, before she was even really rapping, she was performing poetry. And then Propaganda, old school Christian hip hop. Before that, he was doing spoken word poetry. There's guys like Jefferson Bethke. People have heard of him. He's writing books now. He was originally a Christian spoken word artist. I feel like YouTube really popularized it because people could write poems, share them on the internet, and then they started getting asked to perform at mostly youth groups, young adults, etc. And that's what was happening with me. I was performing poetry on the internet. Dude, I had this YouTube account that had like 150,000 followers.
Wow.
And I got rid of it because I was struggling with sin and vanity. So instead of just like tabling it, I got rid of it. And now I'm like, that could have been Canvas's YouTube.
To be fair, you are a slightly reactive personality, right?
I still am, yeah.
Yes.
Less, though.
Especially then.
Yeah, so then I started in sharing the poetry and my testimony that led naturally to preaching.
Right.
Which I'd say the reason I'm a pastor is because I was a poet. Like my preaching journey came out of my poetry journey. But then I tabled it, right? Like I'm planting a church. I perform poetry locally a good bit in Salisbury still over the years, like at local events, open mic nights, things like that, as a way to like engage my city. Salisbury is a super artistic, poetic community.
Yeah.
But then when I was told I was dying, 2021, started the church. I never stopped writing poetry. I just stopped releasing it, performing it, sharing it. The book Memento Mori that released is poems that I started writing like the day after I was told I was going to die until it came out. So really, Memento Mori, like I never planned to release it. There was just a notes file on my phone where I was just writing poems. And like, I don't sit down and write a poem and then write one every day. I sit down and write a poem, go back and like tweak it 100 times. So over 4.5-ish years, Memento Mori was written. And then I think maybe a year ago, someone said, hey, you should, actually our mutual friend Jamie Caldwell, who loves poetry, said, hey, you should release these. They're really good. And I was like, I didn't really want to go, like, I didn't really want to be the poet guy again.
Yeah.
But in the process of putting up the book together, hiring shout out to Jay Stout. He's an artist. Follow him on Instagram. Incredible cover art. Yeah. Captured what I wanted perfectly. Like in the process of doing it, I like fell back in love with poetry, but then releasing it, we actually tried recording this already. And then there was an event at my church that ruined us recording it.
We were 8 minutes into the episode and like the worship team started practicing and people were walking in. It was, we
just had a huge midweek service. It was good.
It was impossible.
It was a good service.
Yeah, it was great, but we definitely didn't keep going. So anyways, how have you seen God use this book?
Right. I was going to answer that question. So yeah, really what I think has cemented, like I just did it because people told me I should. And I was like, I'm going to release this one book, kind of close. And for me, it was closing the door on my like cancer story.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's good.
Like I'm not the cancer guy anymore. And this book, whenever someone talks about the cancer, read this book. Like I'm done. I mean, the whole premise is that like after death, there is life. If you've seen the cover, if you haven't, go on Amazon, message me nicely and I might send it to you if you're poor.
We'll put a link in the show notes too.
If you're poor, I'll send it to you. But seriously, if you can't afford a copy, I might send you one.
You gave me one, so what's that tell you? So anyways,
he's a doctor.
Keep going.
The cover, it has a skull, kind of dark, heavy metal looking, and there's like flowers growing out of the lungs, like after death life. Man, dude, I performed poetry in Oklahoma. I did a reading of the book, like 50, 60 people packed into this coffee shop in Oklahoma City. I love Oklahoma City, one of my favorite places in the world. If God ever told me I could go anywhere I wanted and be obedient to him, I'd move to Oklahoma City and start a church downtown. Like, not cowboys, but like hipster cowboys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want to wear cowboy boots, but also be a hipster. So I was there and there's this coffee shop and there was a little side room and we thought maybe 20, 30 people would come. I was preaching at a church out there. Well, this was kind of tagged along onto that by some friends of mine who go to church there who were like, hey, we can get you into this coffee shop to do a poetry in your book. I go to this event and they ended up not having us in the side room because of how many people they expected coming. We were in the main coffee shop. So people are walking in and out, ordering coffee. This is like a top-notch coffee shop in Oklahoma City while I'm like sharing poems about being raped, suicide, depression, cancer, questioning God,
Heavy
wondering
stuff.
if God's good. Yeah, like I'm reading poems. Probably I change favorites based on my mood. One of my favorites in the book is the Lost Kingdom. And it talks about this like feeling of having Jesus then losing him, and it ends with this idea of wandering roads looking to find the kingdom that you lost, hoping the king walks those roads too, which obviously I think Jesus does. Slight connection to the parable of the prodigal son. There's this girl who is transitioning to become a guy in the game room, and we're selling books at the end, hanging out. If you've ever been to like a small concert or small event, after the event ends, it just kind of ends and everybody hangs out, right? Like there's no dimming of the lights, music, so it just kind of awkwardly ends. I like read the last poem, people clap, stand up, it's cool, and they're selling books, and I'm standing over talking to the people buying the books and signing copies, and she comes up and she comes up trying to transition to be a man. She comes up and she's like, "Hey, are you like a Christian?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, "I didn't know Christian poetry could be good." And I'm like, "Oh, huge compliment." Thank you. LGBTQ, transitioning, not a follower of Jesus, tons of church hurt, really bad experience with mental health. Basically had a pastor, and all hearsay, but what I was told that night is basically had a pastor tell her struggles with depression proved that she wasn't saved. And I don't think she was saved. So, but like, because of that moment, she like walked away and like was not even like I sounds like she was a seeker, went to youth group, was told this, walked away, never wanted to look back. Yeah. She like connected to the poetry so much. She wasn't even in the room. She was at a game night, bro. But she connected.
Listening, yeah.
She connected so much. She said she was so distracted she kept losing the game. She was listening. She's going to the church that we're partnered with out there consistently, and you know, I don't want to like prophesy, but the friends I know who I connected her to, who are like great, some of my best friends who go there, on staff there, are like, she's like about to get saved. She's like, gotta go.
She's asking the questions. You got to see God working.
Wrestling with her sexuality. Realizing, I think, and this was like not a praise on my book, but I think what the book has done, if what everyone tells me is true, the book has given people room to have messy faith and it still be worship. Right? Like if you look at like the woman in Luke 7, which I have a poem about, she brought her mess to Jesus and she was a mess, and Jesus called her mess worship. And I think that's beautiful, but I think that one of the things poetry does, especially I would even go to the Psalms, Lamentations. We should. Poetry gives us an opportunity to, I would say, take a Polaroid of the human experience. And I think what the Psalms do well, and what I hope my poetry does, is it gives people an opportunity to engage with Jesus in like the very human ways, not just in the sacred. I think that the very human things can be sacred. So that's like the big impact. I mean, my favorite compliment, compliments are farce. I'm sure more people who didn't like my book than did, right? But my favorite compliment is that when people read, they felt seen. Tony Hudson read a copy before it came out and told me that, he actually quoted, there's an episode of a friend of ours, Tony Hudson, on How to Tell Good Stories. Tony actually quoted that C.S. Lewis quote in a text to me about the book, saying that reading the poems made him go like, "Oh, you too." Yeah. Some people in our church who I trust and love dearly, who are friends, read pre-copies. And that was like the number one thing I felt seen, which I think is beautiful. So
I feel like in many ways, this is a broader conversation, but you all right?
Yeah, just fidget.
I feel like one of the contemporary Christian downfalls in North America is that we've kind of sanitized faith a little bit, where it's produced, it's polished. Church worship services are produced and polished. And I feel like in some ways, the raw struggle of emotion and experience and difficulty has kind of gone behind the scenes. Yeah. And I think your poems and other opportunities like that have kind of opened up a very biblical processing of, because I mean, when you read David's Psalms or any of the Psalms, there is raw emotion. There's questioning God, questioning God's love, God's knowledge. There's bad theology in the Psalms, in the sense that like, don't quote me on that, but like there's this processing of where is God in this that we would call bad theology, but it's the human experience with understanding.
No, let's double tap that. I'm going to quote you on that. I think if the Psalms weren't a part of the canonized scripture and someone came into the church and started reading the Psalm as a sermon, they're not canonized, right? They're not in the Bible. No one's ever heard them before. Many of those Psalms would get them fired by their church. I know pastors who have been let go of their church.
God, where are you?
Yeah, I know pastors who have been let go by their church, especially like the youth pastor and like a smaller, more traditional church, right? Like the worship pastor, even the senior. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about small traditional. Small is okay, traditional is okay.
Yeah.
But there is like this old school, an air conditioner just kicked on very loudly. Why is an air conditioner kicking on this time of year?
This is such a sweaty podcast.
Yeah, it's so hot. There is this like I believe I could name, and I won't obviously, I could name pastor friends of mine, ministry friends of mine who have been fired by a church for saying things more tame than what the Psalms say.
Yeah. Well, and I know
they are bad theology.
I remember, but you have to go through that to get to good theology. I feel like to experience good theology.
And hey, if you're listening to this and you're like Richard and Phil don't believe Psalms or whatever,
no,
you got to take every book of the Bible for the genre, and the Psalms are not written as like instruction. They're not the epistles. Right, like the Psalms are an artistic. They're canonized. They're inerrant. They're good for teaching. But you got to remember, they are poetic and metaphorical.
Yep, you're processing God in real time with the Psalms.
Yeah,
like David's fleeing from a rebellion, and people are throwing stones down at him in cliffs, and he's like, you hear him capturing that and being like, "What the heck is going on?
Yeah,
where are you? What's going on? Why are my enemies succeeding?
Yeah,
and those are real questions that we should have space to process, ask, and talk about.
Yeah.
And so I think your battle here with cancer and your struggle with these Psalms and the thoughts you're going through is an example of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's super healthy to have space for that, and you've opened up an ability to talk about that with others. The question I'd ask for you though is if a person is actually, let's pivot for a second. Just tell me about the process that you use to write poems. We should be recording past 8:30 at night where we are.
Typically, especially after a midweek service.
Oh man. Yeah. It's gonna be good.
Typically, here's what I'd say. I feel a thing and the thing doesn't stop feeling.
Okay.
Right. Like, I mean, I'm a very emotional person. I struggle with mental health. I'm also like, as much as I joke around, especially on this podcast, like as much as I'm a goober, I am a pretty deep thinker. When I was a kid, I was called an old soul. Which is funny because I'm like a giant goofball, but like I think long, I wrestle with things. I'm a skeptic by nature. Yeah. Like faith is not easy for me. So if I feel something and that feeling doesn't shake, it will typically turn into long thought. And that long thought typically comes out in poetry.
Gotcha.
Some of the poems are super
so
goofy.
You'll throw quick ideas into like a phone note.
Yeah. There's a poem in there that is probably like the most, like, there's not really a theme because I didn't write a book around a theme. Does that make sense?
These are just real-time processing.
But I'm a sad boy, right? So, like, there is a theme, but it's unintentional. But there's one poem called The Twist at Fells Point, and it's about a pretzel shop in Fells Point, Baltimore. I've gotten more flack for that one than people are like, yeah, it was just so out of place. It's like, I really, really like this pretzel shop. I really like these pretzels. I really like pretzels. It's just, like, really repetitive, doesn't rhyme, kind of corny. I remember writing that.
Is that the one you use at the poetry readings?
No, I don't read it. But me and Peyton were actually sitting at this little pretzel shop. It's called The Twist. It's in Fells Point. It's right by the water. If you go down Broadway, it's at the end of the street. It's a little shack. You've probably seen it. And it's like my favorite. The pretzels are perfect. Best pretzel I ever had. We're sitting on a bench, and in that moment, all I could think about was how much I liked the pretzel. And it was almost like a sweet relief from like constant thinking.
You're in the middle of this heavy season.
So I wrote a poem about it. And like that's. I don't know. I just kept thinking about how a pretzel could bring me so much joy. So that turned into a poem. There's also a poem in there. There's 7 poems in order, walking through the stages of grief. Each poem is one of the stages of grief. They're like 8 lines, short poems. I wrote that after my brother-in-law overdosed. Wow. And I was like watching my family try to process brother-in-law who was like separated from the family, was coming back into the family, had just been baptized and got saved. And then it's like, God, why would you take him from us? There's a poem in there about, it's a slight play. I love Edgar Allan Poe. It's a slight play on the rhyme scheme of Edgar Allan Poe's poem Annabel Lee, as well, like the death of youthfulness. And like, it's like whatever. And there's a poem about called Saturday Morning Communion, about the Saturday after I told Peyton my cancer was terminal, and she was making pancakes, and everything felt okay, and it felt like God was in those pancakes. You know what I mean? Like it was just if a thought lingers, it turns into a poem. And honestly, if it a thought lingers, turns into a poem or a sermon. And that's kind of like, for me, sermon prepping has always, like, I've always prepped sermons the way I prep poems.
Gotcha.
Not to like, I'm sure
burden sits, you let it kind of percolate a little bit.
Some seminary professors getting really mad at me for saying that, but like, yeah, something's lingering on my heart and my natural, like, I think I said this earlier. What do I do with this? So the process is a long thought.
You preach, when I've heard you preach to the emotions, and for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't want to like, overly critique or whatnot, but I do think when I've heard you preach, there is a much more, you can tell this passage has been felt as much as it's been studied. And I do think in preaching and ministry leadership, and we're opposite personalities. So this is an interesting interview because I don't think I've ever read poetry, period. Like my entire life, I've never read poetry. And I feel like I should, honestly. I feel like one of the things I want to do going into the second half of my life, quote unquote, I'm 43, so maybe not second half, but you get the idea. Midlife crisis is, man, I don't want to just know things. I want to feel things in a healthy way. So a guy like me who's a little more stoic and informational driven and strategically driven, how do I lean into that feeling through poetry? Like, how can poetry help a guy like me? What would you suggest?
There's a song by the Oh Hellos. I don't know if they're a Christian or not, but they use tons of Christian imagery. They have an album, I think it's called Dear Wormwood, obviously a reference to C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
The song is called Soldier, Poet, King. And the idea is, there will come a soldier who carries a mighty sword. He will tear your city down, Aleo, Lord. There will come a poet whose weapon is his words. He will tear your city down, Aleo, Lord. There will come a king. It's all like this very obvious image of Christ. I think what we often forget is that Jesus gave us our emotions. What I love about that song, there will come a poet. And of course I connect to that, right?
Yeah.
Whose weapon is his word. I think that if you only have an intelligent response to the word of God, you are robbing yourself of really engaging the Lord in the word. We should feel things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't really answer your question, but
no, I'm with you. Like, how do you help people feel things?
So my next step is like you already do. There's something that you feel deeply. Man, and okay, I'm gonna get really weird here and probably get like blacklisted. We did a series at Canvas 2 years ago, Habits of a Healthy Soul, and
we did too.
Yeah, you stole my graphics.
You sent me your graphics,
but we preached it very differently.
Yeah, we did.
One of the habits I preached was sorrow. I think there's a biblical rhythm of sorrow in the Bible. I think when Jesus pulled himself away, like I don't think that was just like, I think we can very like systematize. He prayed. He fasted, was with God, went back and taught. Then he came away and he prayed and he fasted and went back and taught. Like, I think you had to understand, like, there was a longing and a love for the Father that pulled Jesus away. Love is an emotion. Longing, I think, is
Jesus,
an emotion.
the perfect Son of God,
had
who never
emotions.
sinned, had sorrow and emotions,
Deep
and felt
emotions.
things.
I think Jesus, not in the like unmanaged, like messy way, but in like the human way, because he was fully man, fully God. I think we often forget Jesus was fully man.
Yeah.
I think Jesus had the deepest emotions of any human who ever lived.
You know, it's funny. I preached this habit of sorrow, but they're very different than you did.
Yeah.
But I used Jesus in the garden.
Yeah. So did I actually.
Okay. That's funny. I don't think we talked about this. One of the points I made, it's actually one of the most popular sermons of that series was the one I taught. And I talked about how Jesus, as he's getting ready and contemplating the cross, it says that he was deeply troubled, right? Yeah. He goes, my soul is deeply troubled. And the first thing he did was turn to his disciples and say, my soul is deeply troubled. Would you walk with me?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus felt things, but he shared what he was feeling and he invited people into that space.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what your poetry does and poetry can do.
Yeah. I think that every human, like, so I would say, I want to go back to your question. I have one more thought there. How do you help someone like you feel more? I don't think you need to feel more. I think you need to create space for feeling.
Yeah.
There's a study. I'm gonna misquote it if I try to quote the exact details, but there was a study done, and children cry. Somewhere by adulthood, we stop crying. I'm not arguing men need to like cry whenever their toy gets taken.
Right.
But I don't think it's healthy that we stop crying. In countries where men statistically are more likely to cry, the suicide rate astronomically lower.
Wow.
We were made to feel, to express, to interact with the world around us. And I think the culture has shut that out. The Japanese, horrible suicide problem. People will literally, I have a friend who's a missionary in Japan planting a church. People will actually die on the subway of exhaustion. They work so hard. Their whole lives are so rhythmic, so highest suicide rate. And in Japan, if a man cries, it's considered like dishonoring his family. Like according to this, like the code, they should might as well kill themselves.
Yeah.
I think we live that way. Like I think even in America, where we're all mental health kind, there is still this thing like get it together, suck it up. Jesus calls us to come like children. Children cry, and I think we don't like that part.
Right.
I think Jesus does call. I think Jesus calls us into an intellectual faith, sure, a practical faith, sure, a demonstrated faith, sure, but also an emotional faith.
Right.
People remember the old quote, "All of Christ for all of life." Emotions are a part of life.
Yeah, and I think, as generally speaking, as North American Christians and ministry leaders, we're so busy doing the work and doing life that we don't give ourselves space to feel, reflect, and process. And I think that you're just not going to think deeply on the things of God's word and what you're feeling without that space.
Yeah.
How would you say, kind of before we wrap this up, the church?
Yeah.
This is a rare, Christian poetry is a weird subgenre. You don't hear it very often.
Thanks for calling it weird.
I don't say weird. It's just weird. It's not mainstream, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Sorry if weird's the wrong word. Gosh. Write a poem about it later. Sorry. It's not bad to say. Okay.
I'm writing it right now.
Here's the question. How can the church make more room for artistic voices like poets, painters, songwriters, people that lean into this idea of expressing what God is doing through artistic means?
Yeah.
I mean, Canvas is a great model of that. So what are some ways that we can open up that door as ministry leaders or as churches?
Rephrase it.
How can we be more open to invite and give room for artistic voices, painters, poets, songwriters, whatever?
Dude, our church, we have live painting sometimes in the service. Our church is super artistic.
Well, that's why I asked the question of you.
I think one thing is you're going to attract who you're like. So like, I think the reason we have so many in the beginning was because I was an artistic person. But I would say, man, if the church wants to create room for it, make it worship. Yeah. Painting can be worship. Sculpting can be worship. I think, okay, now I'm going to sound super, this is going to be like weird, like maybe like New Age spiritualism, if I'm not careful. I think that one of the things that we can do as humans that makes us the closest to God is creating, like mirroring the creative nature of God. Nobody's more creative than God. Man, if you have someone who paints, maybe let them paint during a service occasionally. Like, it doesn't have to be whatever Bethel Church does, the weird, like, emotional. Like, I have a lady who will literally paint based on the sermon text. And it's incredible. And we've had people be like, man, like when Allie was painting, like, all of a sudden the sermon clicked. If you have people who are musically gifted, host a singer-songwriter night. Right. Like find ways to...
They're probably writing songs based on what they're learning to discipleship. So, like, use that.
It's not hard. And also, like, I think there's a deeper issue than artistry in the church.
Right.
If we actually take people, and I've taken tons of spiritual gifts tests, right? I've given spiritual gifts tests. Your passions and your giftedness often is where your calling's going to lie.
Yeah.
If they're passionate about art and they're gifted in art, they might be called to do art.
Find a way to use it.
I think the church has an obligation to the Lord. When the Lord calls, we make room. Right. So if the Lord calls somebody to do a prison ministry, doesn't mean you have to shift your whole church, but hey, we're going to help you. You know what? We might not be able to do it, but we're going to pray for you. We're going to train you. We're going to commission you. We're going to send you out. Amen. We just launched a prison ministry, bus ministry, youth ministry, worship ministry, a media ministry, food ministry. But when someone says, hey, I'm really passionate about like creating things that honor God. That's the women's paint night once a year.
Yes, right.
It's like, no, like maybe God's calling them to do that.
And find a way to do it.
Yeah, so Canvas is working on we talked to Josh Bowers earlier. Canvas is working on an EP. I have tons of musically gifted people, lyrically gifted people, and
it's like, funny how my view has changed on this, not to like take over the podcast here toward the end, but like the first church I served at, we had a super artistic guy in staff who was just trying so hard to bring arts in, and we would just make fun of it. Like, we actually created an art wall where people, like, during the sermon series, they were encouraged to paint pictures, do sculpting, make art, and we would display it on this wall of the church as like a way to kind of have people are processing. And we just thought it was corny, but that's actually kind of cool now that I look back at it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, bro, our church is like super weird, super artistic. We just had our midweek gathering was a cereal party. That was weird. But like, I think when you give room for people to be weird, you'll be surprised by how people like, and by weird, I mean like carefully weird. When you give room for people to do what they're passionate about, God will bless it.
Yeah.
If it is honoring them.
Gotcha. Well, hey, we should wrap this up. Any last words on your book?
If you can't afford it and you really want a copy, message me. I might send it to you.
Absolutely.
At least a digital copy.
Hey, we'll put the link to Amazon in the show notes, and you can
leave a review.
When I say we, I mean I will put it in the show notes.
Review the book, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have 17 reviews, and some guy named John, who I don't know, he said, amazing, great book, but then gave it 1 star. And I'm like, you don't know how to use the internet, sir.
You've told me about this 3 times. Like, you're taking it really personally.
I reported the review like 20 times.
Should I go in there and report it too?
Yeah.
So do Richard a favor. Review it and report poor John and tell, take away his internet
I thought it was
rights.
John from our church, our stewardship pastor, and it was not. So he was like, no, I know how to use the internet. I'm not 80. He's 70.
So, hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Ministry Mix podcast. If you found today's content helpful, be sure to subscribe as well as leave us a review so that this podcast can get to other leaders just like you. If you got questions or topics you want to hear about, connect with us on social media. Join our ministry.mix group and our group me. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and caring for your soul.
I played the Game Boy.
Bye.